Amnesty India has told its staffers to go back home. Their bank accounts have been frozen. They can no longer conduct their day-to-day operations with the same efficiency, same smoothness. And they're blaming it to the government. They're calling it a witch hunt against Amnesty India, that is of the Modi government. Now, is that the truth? Is this really a witch hunt by the Modi government? That's the question I'm going to answer today. I'm going to at least make an attempt to answer that question. Now, it's not like the Amnesty India just woke up today and had its bank accounts frozen. It was under the scanner of the Enforcement Directorate and the Central Bureau of Investigation since late 2019 for its alleged violations under the FCRA, which is the Foreign Contributions Regulations Act. Now, the case was filed in November 2019. Their offices in Bengaluru and Delhi were also raided. Now, if we talk about the violation under the FCRA, basically it has registered a case, the CBI that is, has registered a case against Amnesty India and at least 3 of its associates for alleged violation of laws pertaining to rupees 36 crore of foreign funds. Now, to skip the bureaucratic mumbo jumbo, in a way, Amnesty India, the money it got through FCRA, it did not spend the money which was consistent with the activities that were listed under the FCRA. It misused that money for other activities which were not allowed in the FCRA, and hence the case that was registered by the CBI and the ED. Of course, there were multiple media reports, some which actually went through the account books of Amnesty India, and they came up with this report that the money that was laundered or which was accepted through FCRA, not laundered, it was actually not used for the activities which are allowed under the FCRA. Now, what is Amnesty India? What is really this organization all about? Of course, we all have heard about Amnesty International, its work being done across the world for human rights, at least on paper. But what is Amnesty India really all about? Let's start from the top, the head of Amnesty India. Now, Mr. Akar Patel, who is the current head of Amnesty India, he is a very political personality, of course. Now, a personality like this, when we just lost 20 soldiers in Ladakh, would be expected to make a mature statement, would be expected to make a statement which is consistent with the country's mourning mood at that point of time. The country was collectively mourning on that afternoon when the news came in. So what did Akar Patel do at that point? He chose that time to present his anti-BJP stance. He said China was just another country with strategic objectives. So Mr. Patel, killing of our 20 soldiers qualified as a strategic objective for China. And he said the real enemy was actually the BJP. Not just that, when Mr. Patel was working with Amnesty International, he wrote a piece in National Herald, which is another newspaper controlled by the Congress party. He said that India was a secular country despite Hindus. Now, it's a self-explanatory statement, but really shows the bias he has against the majority community of India. And this bias was on display when the Ram Janmabhoomi verdict came out, where he said that the verdict of the Supreme Court of India reminded him of the Supreme Court of Pakistan. Now, I'm sure if the verdict had gone the other way, the people would have accepted it as it is. But Akar Patel would have made a different statement. This was just his prejudice against the Hindu community coming out. Not just that, when you talk about the Jammu and Kashmir and Article 370, Akar Patel made some very falsified statements. In one of the statements, he said that the communication blockade has affected the emotional and mental well-being of the Kashmiri people, and they were being denied emergency services, the lies that were already debunked by the Jammu and Kashmir administration. Not just that, he took the same lies to the world, to foreign press. That is Amnesty India for you. But if we talk about Amnesty India's role influencing elections, they have been guilty of doing that also. In 2019, just before the elections in January, they roped in Naseeruddin Shah, whose views about the BJP government are no surprise from a very long time. He was seen accusing Anupam Kher also, because Anupam Kher was supporting the BJP government. They roped in Naseeruddin Shah. They shot a video which had that the constitution was under threat, the dissent was under severe threat, and the political and the human rights of people were being disposed of at will by the BJP government. This was attempted in 2019, just before the national elections. Of course, the attempt didn't work. But that's not all. Amnesty India has also made very falsified statements. One of the other statements that I'm reminded of right now was one that was made on the arrest of Alex Ferreira. Now, he was arrested for the violence in connection with the violence at Koregaon Bhima and his alleged assassination plot connection to assassinate the Prime Minister. He was arrested in regard to that. But they took Alex Ferreira's statement that India is a dangerous country and amplified it on the global scale. That is what Amnesty India does. To give you another example, the Amnesty India, now it has been guilty of Amnesty International, that it has been guilty of closeness with the governments. Now, on paper at least, Amnesty International says that it does not accept any funds from the government, but a closer look suggests otherwise. In 2009, Amnesty received £2.5 million from governments alone. That was 1% of the total donation. The British government, with which Amnesty International has very close connections, it has been the third largest donor in that year. That was 2009. It had also received similar funding in 2008 and 2007. So one can believe that Amnesty India and other groups of Amnesty across the world, they're working on the behest of certain governments. In 2010, rather, an interesting story came out when Amnesty sacked Geeta Sehgal, the head of its gender unit. Now, why was she sacked? She was sacked because she spoke against Amnesty's treatment of someone from the Guantanamo Bay. And the story that came out was that Amnesty kept the rights of terror suspects over those of terror victims because it did not want to sound Islamophobic. Now, that is the kind of mentality, or that is the kind of virtues Amnesty International and, of course, Amnesty India deals with. Now, if you talk about the virtues of Amnesty India, I'll read out a few statements. I'll put them on the screen. Statement on Kashmir. Nearly 2 million people were pushed in the brake of statelessness in procedures that were arbitrary and discriminatory. Now, 370 was revoked. People thought a lot of things will happen. The foreign media had a ball day speculating the most horrendous things that could go on in Kashmir. Nothing like that happened. Kashmir and the two union territories now, they are very well much on their way to development. But somehow Amnesty India, in its 2019 report, it said that 2 million people had been pushed to statelessness without even justifying what statelessness means here. If you talk about this statement on lynching, there was a serious lack of accountability for murders and other attacks carried out by vigilante mobs against hundreds of people based on their religious, ethnic, caste and gender identities. Now, suddenly, a few scattered incidents of lynching, unfortunate nevertheless, they were amplified. The news of these lynchings were amplified to serve to the global press, to serve a certain image of India to the global media or to the global influencers as a whole. Not just that, on the statement of CAA and NRC, again the Amnesty India group, they tried to make a very misleading statement. They said that NRC was going to somehow infringe upon the rights of Muslims in India, that CAA was unjustified to the Muslims of Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan. Now, one thing is that Amnesty wants to speak against a certain position. That's fine. They want to speak against the BJP. That's fine. But when it comes to Amnesty, if they talk about Kashmir, they'll talk about the communication blockade. They'll talk about everything that the people had to go through because of no internet. But they'll never talk about the violence that takes place against soldiers by the civilians. They'll never talk about the terrorists that are aided by civilians. Even on CAA and NRC, the likes of Amnesty are very quick to point out that the government has no data on its people, that the government is not doing enough for its people. Even though NRC is a step towards offering better services to people, it's basically a register of citizens to make sure that better services can be made available to the citizens. When it talks of CAA, it will talk about how the entire law is against Muslims of these three countries, but it won't talk about why CAA is warranted for Sikhs, Hindus, Jains, Buddhists, Christians and Parsis in these three countries, the kind of discrimination they face. So all in all, Amnesty India has had a very one-sided coverage to everything. It just chooses to see what it chooses to see. And today, when its bank accounts have been frozen, it is calling it a witch hunt, as it rightfully would, because it has the habit of seeing the single picture. But it has no explanation on the case that was filed by the CBI. It has no justification on the case that was filed by the CBI. So should an organization that proudly claims to see just one side of the picture and present it with such shallowness be taken seriously? I think not. And therefore, I don't think this qualifies as a witch hunt by the government. All it does is qualify as a law taking its own course, and that is what it should be seen as. Thank you.